it is incumbent upon the players to figure out how the game is being called and, like, just stop putting your arm on the chest of another player and, like,
Right.
don't move 6 inches when you're setting a screen. Like, they know exactly what is being officiated. And to my eye, and like what I've talked to players about, like, it is fairly consistent. It's just a matter of this is very different than September of 2025. So everybody who's returning to the league, or everybody who's even coming from college basketball, where a lot of contact is allowed, is, learning how to play under these particular points of education.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to No Offseason. I'm Zena.
I'm Annie Costable.
And I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And today on the show, we're diving into the state of officiating in the WNBA. Ooh, yes, get ready, y'all. We're not here to rag on the refs, so if that's what you came for, it's not what you're going to get. We're going to have a conversation, though, about what that looks like in the league, because they have put clear emphasis on freedom of movement. But is it opening the game up in a good way, or are all the whistles starting to disrupt the flow of the game and physicality that fans expect from the W? We're going to share our thoughts on the officiating and break down what the league is doing to improve it. But first, a quick reminder for our listeners, we're doing a mailbag episode next Tuesday. We want to hear from you all, so make sure you're sending in your questions ahead of the episode. Okay, so it's Tuesday morning. Well, depending on when you're listening this, but we're recording this for Tuesday morning, which means it's time for the Sabreena Scale. I don't know if I say it the same time every time, but, I just let the movement move me. We're here now. Sabreena, even though there are only 15 teams to rank. Only. I know. Your list looks very different from last week. And you kind of alluded to this, that there would be a little bit more movement because there are a few more teams. But there's a particular team that comes to mind, the Dallas Wings. You had them at number 2 last week, and now they've fallen all the way to number 10. Now, obviously, there's been a little bit of drama surrounding the Wings lately, including head coach Jose Fernandez's public comments calling out the team, saying that there's, quote, selfishness in the locker room, end quote. So with all of that in mind, what ultimately led you to drop Dallas so far in your rankings this week?
Well, most teams have played like 4 games, and Dallas was 1-0 at the time of the last ranking and then lost all of their games this week. So,
yikes.
Yeah.
Fair,
Things
fair,
change
fair.
very quickly
Mhm.
when you only have a very small sample size to deal with in W. But yeah, I think part of it was, multiple losses. Part of it was just seemed a little early to play the I'm going to call out my team in public card. I think it's a card you can play. I very much agree with Jose Fernandez that this is a card you can play. After game 3 of the season, when you lose by 4 points to the Minnesota Lynx, feels a little early, feels a little dramatic for my taste. But hey,
Yeah.
he's playing this card. That kind of augurs to me that there's like more happening. And you guys talked about this last week on the show. There are always things happening in every locker room, right? Like just because a coach is mentioning it or drawing particular attention to it doesn't mean that it's all that different from other locker rooms. But there is a spotlight on Dallas that doesn't exist on every other team because they have Paige Beckers and they brought in a new coach and they had all of these fantastic free agency acquisitions during the offseason. And when you invite more attention upon yourself, I'm looking, and I don't like the pick and roll defense. I don't like the general distribution of usage that is happening on the team. And it's not just like Jose. When Maddie Siegrist, good foot soldier for the Dallas Wings, is coming out and saying, I don't know what my role is, I have some
Eesh.
questions.
Yeah, that surprised me as well. Annie, what were your takes on the full context of what Jose said and also the timing with which it came out?
Don't agree with the timing of his blatant, I don't know if we want to call it an outburst or a call to action.
It was very
I
calm.
think-
Very calm.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
But
yeah,
definitely
it
a
was
call
it
to
was.
action.
Yeah, so outburst, totally not the right word. Call to action, yes. And I just think doubling down on what Sabreena said and even what the players said in terms of their uncertainty about their role is this felt like a conversation that didn't need to go public yet. This is a new team, a new coach. You're still clearly figuring things out. Now, if this was the New York Liberty, halfway into a season where they're trying to repeat and and things are not going their way. Sandy needed to call people out, I think, a little bit more last year. But this year, this early in the season, I don't think this was the best timing for it, specifically when there's still questions about how players are being utilized. I mean, specifically for me, Alana Smith, like I'm wondering how much Jose is maximizing her specifically on the defensive end. And so when you bring this to the public, it now intensifies the microscope that's on your team. And now you're going to have to deal with questions about the locker room, about any potential disconnects, about, who is potentially the source of this perceived selfishness that Jose himself brought to light.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the full context and not taking it out beyond that one little clip, I don't mind exactly what he said, but you're right in that the way in which it was laid out does allow for speculation. And the second you open your locker room that early in the season to thoughts around who could this be about, you're looking around like what's going on in the locker room. That's not the kind of light you want on this team that I think did start the season with a lot of high hopes of this offense working in a different way. And, these pieces being brought together, the 25 pieces that came in a training camp, whittling down into a really nice puzzle. And so, yeah, there's a lot of now added drama for unnecessary reasons. But alas, we'll see what happens. I do love the fact that we're seeing passion come from Jose Fernandez very early with this franchise. And I think it'll work to their benefit. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, let's look at some of the teams that climbed in the rankings. One of the biggest jumps this week came from the Chicago Sky. Sabreena, you had them at number 10 last week, and now they have surged all the way up to number 3. And I ain't gonna lie. Watching Natasha Cloud on Olivia Miles and Skylar Diggins is not playing, I'm like, oh, exactly what we thought is happening. This is scary. They've got layers on layers on this team. And of course, we'd be remiss not to call out Rickea Jackson and the lower leg injury that I'll get some information from you, Annie, and Sabreena on that. And Sabreena, I know you did the write-up on that. But talk to me a little bit about the things that the Sky are doing to establish an identity after moving on from Angel Reese and then bringing in some of these veteran additions.
Impressed at how resilient Chicago has been thus far, because you look at a lot of their big offseason acquisitions, and Azuri Stevens has not yet played. Dejanay Carrington has not yet played. Rickea Jackson, misses the second half of this game. Skylar Diggins has missed a game and a half. Natasha Cloud missed a game, right? Like all of these people who are big name acquisitions have not even been a part of the picture yet. And yet, like, Gabriela Jaquez, freaking awesome. I feel like there was nobody higher on Gabriela Jaquez in the draft process. And even I underestimated what she was going to be this early in her WNBA career. But, she hits that three-pointer to basically seal the game against Minnesota the other night. JC Sheldon, still have some questions about the cost it took to get JC Sheldon, but I have no questions about how good JC Sheldon has been for the Chicago Sky. Just a pest defensively. I mean, she had 2 steals on inbounds, like, in the final 3 minutes of that game. Finishing pretty well around the basket, just like a knockdown free throw shooter, a good 3-point shooter. Everybody makes sense together, right? Like they all just play scrappy. They all play hard. They all have very little concern with like who's getting the ball. Like there's no real egos there. I think Elizabeth Williams has been really awesome. Like we've talked about Camila Cardoso, how consistent can she be? It hasn't mattered as much because Ewell has just been very good backing
on
her
the
up.
glass, baby. Yeah.
Like everything makes sense together, and I was admittedly a little scared of getting too high on the Chicago Sky, even though I liked a lot of their offseason moves, because I was so wrong about them last year. Like, could not have been more wrong about them last year. People were telling me for like weeks into the season, like, you had Chicago 5th in your preseason poll. Yeah, I felt very stupid about it, okay? I felt very stupid about it.
Everybody, okay? Sabreena put herself out there for us.
And I was wrong. And here we are.
That happens.
This is the Tyler Marsh I was expecting when he left the Aces, right? Like, I didn't think there was a meaningful difference between Tyler Marsh and Natalina Costa. They were both equally valuable to that Las Vegas Aces run. And like, this is the kind of culture I thought Tyler could develop. It just took a little bit longer. And it's cool to see it happening in Chicago, even before all of their, full roster has come onto the court.
Yeah, worth calling out. Gabriela Jaquez, 20 points, 8 rebounds. She was phenomenal. And I love the call out to JC Sheldon because whether it was Connecticut, whether it was DC, at Washington, and now here in Chicago, like she just does it, like does what she's supposed to do. This is very much the personality that she had in Ohio as well. So I'm Ohio State, excuse me. Um, so I'm very happy to see her thriving in a different space as well. But you're right, they're piecing together, and Annie, you've seen it all when it comes to Chicago. Just talk a little
Too
bit about
much.
what maybe right, but now seeing what you're seeing, one, can you give us a little bit more context to Rickea Jackson's injury against the Minnesota Lynx, and then two, what you've seen in terms of what Chicago's putting together?
Yeah, so the Rickea Jackson injury is awful to start there. You know, you hate to see any player go down like that. And so my
Hmm.
immediate takeaway was it looked like a non-contact injury. There was a slight, not shove, but kind of there was, a
A
slight
bump.
bump.
Hmm.
Yeah. That led it that happened just before she went down, but it didn't appear like that was necessarily had a huge impact on this specific injury. What we know as of now is that she's getting an MRI done today, which obviously will determine the scope of her injury. I think a side conversation Sabrina and I had was, typically on ACL injuries, I mean, even we saw Emma from the Lynx. How do you say Emma's last name? I always mess it up.
Chakova.
Chakova. Emma Chakova obviously went down with an ACL injury in the game against the Wings. And the takeaway, again, seeing some of these ACL injuries is there's typically not a hyperextension that occurs. It's has been, in some of these specific cases, more of kind of like an immediate sort of crumbling that happens to the floor. And that wasn't the case with Rickea. And so maybe there's hope to be found in that. But we'll, have an update as soon as we speak further to the sky. But as far as what's going on with this team, I think Cheryl Reeves spoke to it really well, and it was interesting to hear her talk about what's working for the Sky, and that's that this team has cohesion.
Mm,
They're playing for each other, and I think that's going to be a difference maker, specifically when you look at a roster that is riddled with injury right now. And even when you compare to last season, like that roster too went
yeah.
through serious injury bouts and was at no point at full strength or only through the first few games before Sloot went down with the ACL injury. And so I think that's going to be a difference maker, specifically if they lose Rickea for any extended period of time, because the question I have with replacing Rickea is she can create when a play blows up. And through these first few games, I haven't seen any other player be a trusted scoring source when a play blows up like Rickea. And so
Mm.
if you are without her for an extended period of time, who's going to be that person? And also that's a question I have for their offense is there's been too many moments where um they aren't able to run what they want to run, and then you kind of see them go into frantic mode. And so I think offensively, um if they have to clean that up as the season progresses.
For sure, yeah, and just thinking about this injury-riddled season some of these teams are having, perfect time to plug last Friday's episode about longevity. A great
Hmm.
conversation you and Leja and Sabrina had about just how important that is, especially for teams with championship aspirations. Okay, let's keep it moving and let's talk about one of the new teams on the block. Okay, the Portland Fire. They were at the bottom of your rankings last week, Sabrina. This week, they've climbed up 2 spots. Look at them.
2 spots,
Okay.
yeah.
2
Doesn't seem as
spots.
dramatic after we've talked about the
It
Dallas and
doesn't.
Chicago
That's
shifts.
okay. But listen, knowing that there is a lot of movement, any type of movement is positive. And so, especially when you're going up the rankings and you're a team that is still trying to establish their identity. So, what are you seeing in Portland right now that is getting your fire going. You see what you did that? Okay, cool.
Say that there is an identity. I still haven't
Mm.
quite figured out what it is offensively. That takes a little bit longer, I think, than on the defensive end. But they are a very pressure-heavy team on defense. They full court press more than any team in the WNBA. It's like by a significant margin. Uh, when you see like a 100 percentile thing, like that's usually a good indicator that things are happening
Yeah.
more often
Yeah.
than elsewhere. But yeah, a lot of pressure. Um, trying to force turnovers, trying to make teams take a long time to bring the ball up the court to get into their offense, because I think they are a little undersized once you get into the half court. Like Emily Engstler, Louisa Geisel-Soder, it's not exactly like as big as you'd want your 4 and your 5 to be defensively. Um, so I think, they're playing to their strengths of like they have a lot of depth, right? They're going to put a lot of bodies onto the court. So they're going to try to tire you out, make you make bad decisions with the ball. And when they hit their threes, then good things can happen, right? Like the one game that they've won this season is when they hit 15 threes. When they were sub double-digit threes, they lost both of those games. But I think they were closer against New York than you might have expected in the other game. And the Chicago loss looks better with hindsight, honestly.
Right.
Now that I know how good the Chicago Sky are.
Right. I love I think it was Lisa Byington that told the story of them asking pregame Alex Sarama how many threes is a good number for them to put up. And he, I may have said something like a lot or whatever. And then they were like, well, what number? Like, you put up 31. Is that a good number? He was like, yes, immediately. And it's like, okay, so Portland's going to get up a ton of threes. Okay. All right. I'm very curious to see how the movement continues on the Sabreena scale. Now, the point around Rickea Jackson and her going out with injury is actually going to be a really nice transition point for our next topic. Natasha Cloud, her teammate in Chicago, said after the game, she called out the officials saying, quote, their ultimate job is to control and protect the players in this game. And I think that this group today failed to do so. They failed to protect Rickea. So on the other side of this break, we're going to talk a little bit about how the league is looking to protect players, is looking to do their job, and is looking to get a handle on officiating in the W. In season 30 of the W, one of the biggest early conversations has been about the whistle. In the Minnesota Lynx season opener against the Atlanta Dream, the two teams combined for 42 fouls, 24 on Minnesota and 18 on Atlanta. And afterward, Cheryl Reeve openly questioned the way that the game was officiated. It sparked us to ask the question, has the league become over officiated? Because one key offseason development in the WNBA was the creation of an officiating task force. Okay, we're getting official here, y'all. Officiating task force made up of league officials, players, and coaches. The goal was to address concerns about excessive physicality and inconsistent refereeing by enforcing existing rules more strictly. So, Annie, what exactly is this task force focusing on, and how much of what we're seeing early this season is connected to those changes in officiating emphasis?
Yeah, so Sabreena and I spoke to Sue Blau, the WNBA's head of referee performance and development, as well as Monty McCutcheon, the head of WNBA officiating, earlier today. And one thing we got into was obviously the task force and what's kind of being focused on there. And what Sue explained to us was that the discussion so far, which there have been multiple since the end of last season, has really focused on not rewriting rules. There wasn't a thought or emphasis that rules needed an overhaul, but it was more so about making sure that these rules were being upheld to a good standard and that, mistakes were being addressed properly. And so I think what we're seeing early in the season, is obviously a tighter whistle, which has led to a substantial jump in the average number of fouls called per game. Last season, at this point in the year, there were 38.7 fouls per game through the first 10 games of the 2025 WNBA season. This year, that number's up to 43.9 fouls per game on average. And so, again, we're seeing that uptick because one of the emphasis has been, again, on ensuring
It is
that these
emphases, by the way.
calls, yeah, okay,
Yep.
that these calls are being made properly, and the rules that exist are being upheld. Now, the task force, what we know, has included, or we know up until this point, Cheryl Reeve and Becky Hammond have both outwardly acknowledged that they are part of this task force. But what I learned today from a source that's also part of the task force is that it includes Phoenix Mercury coach Nate Tibbetts, Indiana Fever coach Stephanie White, Sandy Brondello, Toronto Tempo coach, Morgan Tuck, the Connecticut Sun general manager, Kurt Miller, the Dallas Wings general manager, and Jonathan Kolb, the New York Liberty general manager. So that obviously doesn't include everyone in the league. There's 8 coaches and GMs total on this task force, and it is separate from the competition committee, which includes every coach and GM in the WNBA.
Okay, so love this. Love the intentionality of bringing different minds together to talk about this and to examine this. I'm very curious as to how these points of emphasis came to be. We know last year there was a large focus on, quote, excessive physicality. But there's also a lot of players saying, Sabreena, like, but this is what the W's always been. It's always been a very physical league. Um, then there was a focus of, well, okay, well, there's a lot of physicality, and this is just this is what the W is. But there's an inconsistency in recognizing that physicality and how that physicality manifests itself on the basketball court. Uh, I'm curious, like, when this task force came to be, what were they looking to fix? What were their main concerns? Was it the over emphasis on physicality, the overemphasis on inconsistency? And
I would agree with you that I think the physicality of the WNBA has historically been a feature, not a bug. I think it
yeah,
is not necessarily a bad thing that like there was some contact being let go in the WNBA. But there
mhm,
was also an acknowledgement that it got a little out of hand in 2025. Like
yes,
I remember talking to Kelsey Plum at the end of the season, and she was like, "I've just like been in an ice bath ever since the season ended
oh,
because like this season was very hard on me, in a way that like previous seasons hadn't been. You know, and she's a player
mm,
that sets a lot of screens, and is probably a victim of some of that freedom of movement that we've talked about so much on the perimeter, or lack thereof in terms of freedom of movement. So the game getting excessively physical was something that Sue and Monty referred to. And that also just they're generally proud of the performance of the referees. I think it's like generally on broad scale good, but there were some high profile errors that stuck out. And so it was a combination of those errors and then a general like acknowledgement that like, hey, we just need to pull back a little. Like, sure, the league can be physical, but not this physical.
did they mention any particular errors that said, "Ooh, we need a task force"? Like,
Yeah. So Sue Blau immediately referred to one game, which like the fact that she pulled this date right out of her hat tells you that she's been thinking about it, for
she's been
for
going to
some time.
sleep thinking about this.
You may remember this game last year between Indiana and Connecticut. She pulled out the date June 18th when
Mm,
there was
16th.
some June 16th. Sorry, there were some confrontations, I would say, between the players on the court. And Sue acknowledged that during this game, the officials just didn't have the game in control from the
mm,
beginning of the game, right? Like there was excess physicality during the first quarter that they didn't get a handle of, and that escalated and emotions escalated. And then there was a play towards the end of the game that they acknowledged should have been an ejection, and they didn't eject the player in real time. I believe that was for a shove of someone, or like Marina Mabry like taking someone to the floor. There was
mm.
a lot going on. Monty McCutcheon acknowledged some hair pulling that went uncalled in this particular game too. So yeah, that was one game, and admittedly, a lot of things involving the Indiana Fever are high profile, but like they didn't feel that their referees performed to their standard in that game, and that was one of those high profile errors they acknowledged, egregious errors that they acknowledged from their performance in the 2025 season.
I vividly remember this. The game is, I would say, the game that launched the Sophie Cunningham podcast. Like
Literally.
that was Show Me Something was birthed out
Show
of
me something.
her protecting Caitlin in that game. Yeah, okay, I would say that was an egregious lack of officiating, I guess.
Mhm.
And I'm happy that they saw that and they see it. So Now, we know a little bit about who's part of the force. We know a little bit about the efforts of what the force is, trying to attend to. Annie, how would you say the players are adjusting to the way that the game is being called?
Yeah, I think there's been a mixture of responses, but the overall response has been we got to adjust. Like, this is
Mm,
clearly going to require some adjusting. And I think some players maybe are hesitant to go in depth on their level of detest for some of these adjustments because they're not trying to get fined. So the ones that I've spoken to, a lot of them have leaned more towards we're going to need to adjust to this. But obviously, Natasha Cloud was kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum after the
mm,
Chicago Sky win over the Minnesota Lynx, in that she was saying the officials didn't do a good enough job of protecting players. And I think something that should be acknowledged here too is Natasha got a technical that wasn't totally obvious from the broadcast because the
mm.
broadcast cut away from Rickea Jackson after she was injured and went to break. And in the immediate moment after Rickea's injury, you could see Natasha Cloud go over to the officials to discuss something with them. And in the post-game interview is when she acknowledged that
Yeah.
moment being the one when she was assessed a technical. And the reason for it, she said, was, she emphatically explained to them they're not protecting the players in this game. Now, this specific moment, again, with Rickea, there was a slight, like, hand on the back, some type of small shove from Nia Coffey, but you could tell right in that moment when Rickea goes down, Nia's not touching her at all. I believe it was Nia. But anyways, so I think players are having mixed reaction to it. And the
Mm.
interesting part to me is how this is impacting bigs specifically. And
Yes.
Jonquel Jones is someone who's spoken at length about her, struggle navigating this new situation.
I'm really happy you
And
brought that up. Let's talk about it from a basketball perspective for everyone listening. Everyone's gonna have their opinions on, how who's supposed to be on the task force and what they should be focused on. But let's actually talk about what we're going to see as a result of these points of emphasis. And I'm gonna start from the big girl perspective, especially when it comes to setting screens out on the perimeter and working inside the post. Let's start with the setting screens. Oh God. I'm gonna tell you right now, setting screens is stressful, okay? Because it is. It really is. You've got to set your feet, which is insane because you're setting your feet, which means that the guard who's using the screen is supposed to set up their defender to use said screen to run into your screen. If your guard does not do that, and you're trying to set a good screen, you will get in trouble because that
The
means
guard
you
goes
have no
early, right?
the
Yeah.
guard goes
yeah.
early. The guard doesn't, set up the dribble to go back off of it. The guard just blows right around you, and you're trying to help them out, right? You're so selfless. So you're going to just slide on over just an inch or two. You're going to just lean over just a little bit just to help get some sort of resistance to that defender. And then beep, whistle automatically. And if you watch these, the WNBA just put out these points of emphasis videos around what they're calling for freedom of movement. Part one really focuses on freedom of movement on the perimeter and in the post. And you see, I mean, Bree Jones. There's one play where Bree Jones is setting a screen, I believe, for Alicia Gray, and it's Ray Burrell coming off, and she sets it and rolls. I'm gonna tell you right, she barely moved, in my opinion. Okay. But again, I've got the mindset of a big, so I'm like, that ain't no foul. But that's what they're going to be calling that stuff, and it's going to be really, really close. I wanted to hear, as you guys talk to Monty, you talk to Sue, uh, this aspect of freedom on the perimeter, freedom of movement on the perimeter, and how bigs play into that. Because a lot of times they're helping their guards get movement by setting picks. What do they say about what that's going to look like in terms of what bigs are allowed to do?
Well, I think one thing that
Well,
Monty said that was pretty interesting was like, there's no such thing as a perfect screen. Like, there is going to
Oh,
be
thank you for
movement.
validating us.
There's going to be
Thank
movement
you.
on all of these screens. It's a matter
Thank you.
of how much movement you are willing to allow. He basically said, like,
Mm,
everyone moves 1 or 2 inches. Where is the line that we draw? Like, how
mm.
many inches do you have to move before it's considered a moving screen? And so that's something that they got into with the task force over the offseason. Um, and I think, I'm not sure if Annie mentioned this yet, but like, this is something that they plan to revisit during the course of the regular season. Like, this has not been a WNBA policy before to like visit with the competition committee during the season and evaluate how officiating is going, but they are going to do that with their task force this year because of, I guess,
Mm.
all of the scrutiny and attention that they have put into the matter. But yeah, screens. If you're seeing a lot more moving screens, it's by design. Like, that's how they're trying to call it. But like you said, Zena, like, they're all a little moving, and like they were just trying to figure out this offseason
Always.
how much, you're allowed to
Mm-hmm.
move. So I
Okay.
think bigs are feeling the brunt of this because so much of their job is setting screens. Like, they just, by definition of their role, like we're seeing more guard to guard screens, sure, but bigs
Sure.
proportionally set more screens, and so that being a point of education for the WNBA is going to result in more calls coming their way.
Love seeing inverted screens now and being like, "Yep, see guards, see how does
It's
it feel
hard.
now?" It's hard. It's hard. Annie, what did you see, or what are you particularly concerned about when it comes to bigs?
I think just to double back on what Sabreena was saying, or to use what Sabreena was saying to double back on what we were saying earlier, is that that's the intention behind this task force, is to have a better understanding of what's going to be called consistently. And I think
Mm,
that is also at the root of some of these early complaints from players and from coaches, is there's still a feeling that things are not being called consistently. And one of the ways the this Sue and Monty plan to address this issue of consistency among, many, is they have an evaluation process. I don't know if they said it was a video resource that they're using, Sabreena, but they're evaluating every game immediately after the game, is what they
yep.
said. And they're able
Wow.
to send that evaluation to officials to discuss, to go through. And the other interesting point I thought about this evaluation process is the league doesn't outline an official schedule for the entire season. Like, if I'm Annie Costable and
Uh-huh.
I'm an official in the WNBA, I'm not getting my full season schedule. So how I perform early in the season is going to determine what games I'm officiating late in the season. If I do a great job,
Wow.
great. I could get more games, or I could get more high profile games. If I'm doing a job, I might get pulled from certain games. So I think those are two interesting notes in terms of how the W is evaluating and attempting to, hold itself accountable.
Oh, that's interesting. It also makes me think of, there was a report recently that the NBPA, the National Basketball Players Association on the men's side, did a
This is so
survey.
funny.
Yeah, it was, well, it wasn't funny to the refs. I'll break it down really quickly. The NBPA sent a survey out to the players to essentially tier rank the NBA officials. And they were basically like, you get put them in a tier of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And their proposition was basically that tier 1s and 2, based on their performance, you get to do the playoffs, and only and I think it's the first 2 rounds of the playoff, and then
I think tier 1
tier
gets to do the finals.
correct, and tier 1, only tier 1 gets to be at the finals. Now, do we think that the NBA is actually going to be
Well, they
execute this?
haven't thus far. Like, they
They
were
haven't thus
tier
far.
3. I'm putting this in quotes because it's how the players ranked them. They were tier 3 officials doing the playoffs.
Yes, exactly. That's what they said.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And so it's interesting that there is some level of a not tiering, but evaluation in real time on the WNBA side, and you got to properly call your games. Now, this is interesting too, because you're saying that they're evaluating this after every game, and I would think that most of the fans would want in-game analysis, right? And so, what do they say about Secaucus? And what I mean by Secaucus, y'all, that is where on the NBA side, if a play is getting reviewed There is a team in Secaucus, New Jersey that is reviewing plays in real time and then sending information back to the refs on site to say, this is the final call, this is where it lands, etc. There is no such thing on the WNBA side. Where does that land? Where are we at with that?
Yeah, the last 2-minute report is something that many people have been clamoring for some time and have questioned what's the holdup in the WNBA. Even Monty McCutcheon himself today said, this isn't an us problem. This is a resources problem. We would love the last 2-minute report. We would love that accountability factor because, I mean, again, this is his explanation to us, but he doesn't seem afraid of the accountability. In fact, he emphasized that level of accountability helps officiating get better. What we also have been told by the league via Bethany Donovan regarding the potential of a WNBA replay center was that, quote, we're constantly evaluating every aspect of our referee operations program, and a major focus is on how technology can help advance the game and support high-quality officiating. Those discussions are ongoing, and we will continue to evaluate further investment opportunities in those areas. It's certainly something we're exploring, but there's nothing to announce at this time. End quote.
Okay. Thank you for laying that out so officially. End quote. I'm immediately thinking of what MLB, right, has done with the robot umps and the level of testing they did in the Sabreena, keep me right.
The minor leagues,
Triple
let's
A?
just
The
say.
minor
Yeah.
leagues. Okay, yes. The minor leagues, and then being able to implement that. And I ain't gonna lie, it's been fun for seeing the fans of MLB get excited about the robot umps and get excited about like correcting refs in real time, which is so messed up. We're all human, I get it,
We're
but
all
like
human.
shaming people in public is, I don't necessarily love that aspect of it, but it is important to get the right thing, right? To get the right calls. And I'm very curious as to if the leagues are in communication of how could that happen on the basketball court. There's so much more movement. It's a lot less. Is it in this line? Are you in the line, on the way to a base? It's a lot more
I feel like the only
involved.
things
So
you could use robot referees for in the NBA are like
out of
goaltends
bounds. Oh,
and out of
goaltends.
bounds and like, is it a 2 or a 3? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Just all the things that are around lines. So that's real. Okay. So let's keep talking a little bit about the stuff on the court because Sabreena, I feel like if everything's about freedom of movement and everything's about ensuring that folks aren't being hand checked and they're not having, they're posting up and they're not getting bows in their backs for too long or they're not being draped all over, which we've seen. We have seen. Is this giving way to a way more offensive focused game? Are we going to see scoring numbers skyrocket as a result of this?
We really have thus far.
Mhm.
I mean, Annie mentioned the foul stats, like that naturally leads to a lot more free throws. I will
Y'all
say
better
a
get in the
game that
gym. Y'all better get in the gym.
the game that was in
W
my neck
players.
of the woods this weekend between the Sparks and the Tempo, that was a particularly egregious foul fest. There were 59 fouls in that
was
game,
crazy.
resulting in 72 free throws. And so, yeah, maybe that one was offensively aided by the freedom of movement calls. But, I mean, in general, like I think the coaches and the players have been very like united in saying that like the officials are trying to protect us. Like the goal of these rules is to try to protect the players. And like, I was talking to Marina Mabry over the weekend. She's like, I mean, it's great. Like I hate getting clipped on screens. Like this is nice that like they are called fouls,
Right.
I do think it's upon the players to adjust, right? And, you always see this where the game gets called pretty tight at the start of the season and the number of fouls slowly declines over the course of the year. And then the playoffs are like an entirely different kind of basketball. We can get to that at a different point. But it is incumbent upon the players to figure out how the game is being called and like just stop putting your arm on the chest of another player and like don't move 6 inches when you're setting a screen. Like they know exactly what is being officiated. And to my eye and like what I've talked to players about, like it is fairly consistent. It's just a matter of this is very different than September of 2025. So everybody who's returning to the league or everybody who's even coming from college basketball where a lot of contact is allowed is, learning how to play under these particular points of education. So, I don't have like all of the offensive stats in front of me. Like anecdotally, it feels like more points are being scored, but let me actually look that up while Annie's talking.
Well,
Yeah.
I would actually argue the opposite in the sense of, and players have spoken about this too, specifically Breanna Stewart. I think it was after their loss to the Portland Fire,
Might have even been
and
their overtime win over
or
Washington.
maybe it was early. It was early in the season. We are early in the season, but I think it was when they played Portland. But either way, it was one of the post game press conferences. Stewie talked about the disruption with the fouls called and how that slows down what you're trying to run on the offensive end. It just disrupts it when you're constantly dealing with pauses in the game. And so I think that's something that'll be interesting to monitor is sure, you know, points wise, you're seeing an increase maybe early on in the season so far in, you know, final scores because of the amount of trips to the free throw line teams are taking. But in terms of flow offensively, I would say it's going to have the opposite effect if there's if the number of fouls called per game doesn't at some point level off.
Yeah. I think for those of you listening that are, new to this space and you're like, what should we be watching for? What should we be looking for? The thing that stood out to me in the points of emphasis video that was sent out by the WNBA was how much off-ball movement was being monitored. And it's things that if you're looking at the ball and you're looking at the main action, you might miss what a referee on the backside is looking at. Someone that is, setting up a screen that's coming across the paint or coming across the baseline that's trying to get to a position to set up a play. That sort of stuff, if you're not letting a player get to their position, even if they're not involved in the action, that is going to be stopped. And that's what probably makes fans feel like, oh, the game is not going, right? There's all these abrupt disruptions and they're seeing the ball action, but they're not seeing what's going on off ball. And that is what makes it feel as if you're not getting to see the action fully, lay out and continue into what a player or a coach or a team was trying to execute.
Okay, so I looked up the number real quick just
sure,
so we have
yes.
it. Through the first 10 days of the last WNBA season in 2025, teams averaged 80.0 points per game. And through the first 10 days of this WNBA season, they're averaging 87.5 points per game. So yeah, a lot of offense.
That's a lot of offense. Okay. Cool. Got it.
This doesn't account for like regulation versus overtime, so that could add some things. Like we've had some overtime games, but yeah. Just big picture.
To your point about that Tempo Los Angeles game, the Tempo put up 30. They made 39 free throws. Of their 106 points, 39 were free throws. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. I don't know all the numbers of how many times that happened, but yeah.
And to me, like it's like Annie was talking about the flow. Like it's really hard it doesn't look the same way as like if you're getting a foul-free game or like a less foul-intensive game, but like the games are just taking a very long time. I mean, I think about how national television slots give 2 hours for a WNBA game. Like if you're playing on ESPN, game starts at 10 a.m., 12 o'clock, like the next program is starting on ESPN.
Right.
This is actually in the newsletter today, but every game other than 3 of them, so like 25 out of 28 games have been more than 2 hours. So like they are blowing past their windows.
Right. And it's been like that. I mean, I've experienced it on hosting Ion where we haven't had game breaks. This last week we didn't have a game break show because a game went to overtime, of course, but also by the time a game is finishing, another game has started. And we're going, you're going straight into that action. And that typically happens on the NBA side way more than I've seen it happen on the W side.
But it's one of the things I love about a 40-minute game is like you can get in and out in 2 hours. Like that's one of the appeals. Like think about how often Adam Silver on the NBA side talks about how he wants to get in 2.5 hours, right? Like and the WNBA usually has been able to get, start and finish in 2 hours, and that is not happening right now.
Yeah. Okay. As a person that was fully, I would say, recruited on my defensive abilities. My offensive abilities were not there, y'all. I was a shot blocker and I talked in transition, okay? This feels like if you're a defensive minded player and that is your thing, this probably feels like, this is really frustrating. There's even more emphasis on what I'm doing and what I can contribute to the game. But I am very curious as to, if the offensive explosion is actually going to be fun for fans to watch more buckets go in, but how those buckets come to be. If they're all free throws, that ain't fun, right? I think that's really important. I want to close this out and ask you guys, thinking about everything that we've kind of laid out about officiating and knowing that the biggest frustration is really around consistency, and not only consistency within a game, but consistency across the league and across the association. What would you say is an ideal WNBA game from an officiating standpoint? Not only I want it from Sue and Monty. What would they say is a perfect game in their world? Like, oof, we did our jobs. Bravo to us. Everybody gets raises. Like, what would that look like for them? And then I'd love to hear from you two. Like, what would a great officiated game look like from you?
Well, we didn't ask Monty or Sue this question, so I definitely don't want to
Ah,
speak for them.
okay,
But if
sure.
I put myself in the shoes of Sue and Monty, let me get there. I think I'm just joking. No, I think a well officiated game in their mind is not a perfect game because again, they acknowledged like
Human.
mistakes are made. Yeah, human error is made. But from what we all discussed, it sounds like a well officiated WNBA game is one that doesn't allow things to escalate. And I think that's, again, something that we saw happen quite a bit last season beyond even, the Marina Mabrey shove to Caitlin Clark that didn't result in an ejection. There were multiple games throughout the year where things escalated and more problems were created because of that. And so I think a well-officiated game is one that doesn't allow things to escalate. And I will say, for my personal opinion, I agree with that. That to me is that's what I want to see because the physicality I don't want to see get tamped down entirely. But if you don't allow things to escalate, then it prevents egregious, to use Sue's word, egregious escalations that we can see result in, like harmful play that just isn't good for the game at all. The physicality, that's something I don't think anybody wants to see go away entirely. But I think it's just about, preventing things from escalating.
That's fair. Okay. Well, what about you all? Sabreena, I'll start with you.
I
If
think
you
Annie
were
had the
sitting
right
down,
idea with the Sue and Monty comment. Like a well-officiated game does not
sure.
allow escalation. Yeah.
And what about you personally, though? If you're looking at a game and
I
you're
can't do
like,
70
yes,
free throws. I can't do it. I'm not here for it. I'm sorry. I don't even care if that many fouls are actually happening. I cannot do 70 free throws.
Okay, that's fair. What about you, Annie?
Yeah. Let's get that number in
Yeah.
like the 40 to 45, just or like the
I'm with
players
you.
just stop fouling, like
That
just
part
don't do
too.
it, like that's also on you.
That's
Yeah,
real.
I'm with Sabreena. I mean, 70 free throw, that's insane. Like that's insane. No game should
I want
have
my
over
2-hour
70 free
window
throws.
back. Like that's what I
Yeah.
want to have.
I feel
And
like
to that point too, like I want to see these offenses moving and running all the way through. I don't want to see the stop and go. I don't want to see, limited actions because of officiating. So again, I know that they are trying to emphasize this freedom of movement, and I do think that's important. I think they got to find the balance that allows basketball to be played fluidly and not some of this stop and go that we're seeing that's really disrupting offensive actions.
yeah.
I will say
Yeah.
that like this is not the official's fault. The officials are calling what is meant to be called. Like they are calling what the players are doing. The one thing I do take exception with is how long the reviews take. Like that to me really drains the flow
That
of a
was going to
game.
be mine. That
Yeah.
was going to be mine. I think if a game is well officiated, it is, yes, love the idea of, you're not basically giving a free throw contest as a game. But also for me, it's the speeding up the review process. It is crazy how much momentum, how much life got sucked out of games last year. And we've seen a little bit already this year of just like people trying to figure out, how is it taking this long? Like, what is happening
I
behind the
think
desk?
this
And
is
the
where
worst
you
part is,
see the absence of the replay center, right?
exactly. And the worst part is the especially if you're watching at home, every time everybody behind the desk looks confused. And I know they're doing their job. But it just makes it worse. It makes it feel more like egregious. We'll just continue to use this word. It's just like, come on, somebody's got to know what the answer is. It can't be this hard. So yeah, I think being able to keep within that 2-hour window, keep the reviews quickly. I mean, get through those reviews quickly and back to the action of the game.
I'm dying at you saying it can't be this hard, Zena, because I'm remembering Cheryl Reeves' iconic press conference from last year when she said, officiating, it's not that hard.
It's not that hard. Oh, well,
You
we
wanna
know
know
what she
something
said.
my mom always said to me as a child? My mom was one of my first basketball coaches, which is maybe why I didn't go pro. Mom, what were you doing?
No,
I'm just joking.
Don't go on your mama like that.
I love you, Mom. No, she's the best. But she always, I would come home from games and I'd be raging out about the officiating. And without question, she would always say, a game never comes down to officiating. She's like, I don't want to hear that. Don't leave a game up to the officials. I can't remember a single time my mom had my side when I was complaining about officiating. So I just have to say, shout out to you, Mary Lou.
I love that. On that, we're going to mic drop that. Very well done, Marilou. On that note, we're going to play a game on the other side of this break. Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation around officiating. And hopefully, folks don't put on 70 free throw games anymore this season. We'll see what happens. All right, y'all. I got a quick game for you. Super simple. It's just a matter of, are you keeping up with the stats? Are you keeping up with the leaderboard? Okay. Are you keeping up with who is doing work around the association? So it's going to just be a game of who's leading. All righty. You guys ready to go? Just got quick four questions. Want to see if you guys know, and I want to see if you all listening know. After first few games within the WNBA officially in the books, who is leading the league in points per game right now? Points per game. Is it A'ja Wilson?
Yeah, A'ja.
Is it Kelsey Plum? Is it Caitlin Clark? Or is it Sony Citron?
A'ja.
It ain't. It's her old teammate. It's Kelsey Plum, averaging 26.8.
She put up 45 and she's not leading the league.
Well, apparently in the other game, she didn't put up enough because Kelsey Plum's been a little bit above her in terms of per game. But yes, it is important that we call out the fact that A'ja Wilson now has had the most amount of 45-point games in WNBA history casually and went 15 of 18 as she put down 45 points. That's just ridiculous. All right, let's keep it going. Who is currently leading the league in steals per game? Is it Jordan Canada, Brittany Sykes, Veronica Burton, or Maureen Johannes?
Oof.
Owned by Maureen being on this list to begin with.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, is this a trick question? I'm gonna go with Veronica Burton, but I feel that is wrong.
I'll go with Slim.
Ooh, both wrong. It is Jordan Canada. She's reviving her all defense right here. Yes, shout out to Jordan Canada. She is.
I should have known that actually.
Thing.
She had a ton of steals against Vegas the other day.
Yeah, I can say. I was just gonna say.
All right, now who is leading the league right now with the most amount of 3-point shots made? Is it Caitlin Clark? Is it Maureen Johannes? Is it Chelsea Gray? Or is it Marina Mabry?
Maureen.
Yeah, I'll go Maureen. Yeah, that's good.
Woo! Well done, ladies. It is Maureen Johannes. She's got 15 made 3-point shots. And I imagine most of them were made on one foot. All right, let's keep it going with who has the most amount of assists per game right now, or who has had the most assists per game or in a game. Most assists per game. Excuse me.
Yeah, those are different. Yeah.
Yep, those are.
Yeah, I was like, wait, these are two different things.
Nope. Assists per game. And the options are Jackie Young, Alyssa Thomas, Caitlin Clark, or Veronica Burton.
I
think
just
it's
saw
Caitlyn.
this the other day.
I
don't think it's
James Wood actually
Caitlyn.
just wrote about this. Like they adjusted some stats for Caitlyn. Like they gave her 2 more assists the other day. I feel like that probably pushed her ahead.
Oh, damn. Okay. Well, I'm gonna not agree with you because I want there to be a
It's no
winner to
fun.
this
Yeah.
game. So even if it is Caitlyn, I can't pick Caitlyn because Sabreena already claimed her. I swear I just saw this. So it's, what were the choices again? One more time.
AT,
No
Veronica
problem.
Burton, and Jackie Young, right?
Okay.
That's correct.
I think it's AT. I'm not sold, but I think it was AT.
Well, I will give you this. 0.5 of an assist. Alyssa Thomas is behind Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is averaging 9
Thank you, James
assists
Boyd.
right now. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. They added on 2 assists. I believe it was to either the Washington game or the Storm game. But yeah, 9 assists right now for Caitlin Clark. Pretty impressive.
I was looking at this because of Olivia Miles, and I was trying to see where she stood in terms of the league's, hierarchy
Assist
and
leaders,
assists
yeah.
per game. And I was shocked that she wasn't top 3. I think she was 5th in the league. So anyways.
And it's and Caitlin's got 9 assists, 5 turnovers per game. Alyssa Thomas has 8.5 assists per game, 3.8 turnovers a game. So you handling the ball, you handling the rock, you're going to have a lot of turnovers. But I do have to give a lot of credit to Veronica Burton, who had that 12 assist, 0 turnover game to open the season. That was pretty impressive. She's averaging 7.3 assists per game with only 2 turnovers. So that assist turnover ratio is looking pretty good over in the Bay. Alrighty, that is going to be it for today. That was a fun little game.
You didn't even do rebounds. Like that's the one I actually know, Zena.
Oh, well, I mean,
big
we
girl
were
here.
trying to
I
keep
thought
it
I was going to get
short.
this one.
We were trying to keep it short. Okay, well, let's do it. Why not? Heck, we got a little bit of time.
I can't
Who-
pick the same
who
answer. and
is-
she's
who
gonna-
is
You can go
leading.
first, Annie. It's fine.
Who's leading the league in rebounds? Is it Camila Cardoso? Is it Angel Reese? Is it Anissa Morrow? Or is it Kiki Iriafen?
It's got to be Angel, right? But now I don't know. Is it Kiki? It's got to be Angel.
It's Kiki.
Sabrina? It is Kiki.
Yeah.
13.7 rebounds a game. Angel Reese is right behind her at 12.7. Everyone else is in the 10s. So Kiki and Angel going at it. And I like this because we've seen the claps between the two of them. This is going to be a nice little battle for the ages as they continue to grow in their sport. Very exciting to see. Okay, now we'll close it out, y'all. Appreciate everyone tuning in, and make sure you're tuning in on Thursday because Leja and I are going to be back with another conversation that's amazing and fun. I think we killed it last week as an association, aka a no off season. We had some really great conversations overall. And don't forget, we got a mailbag episode coming up. We want to hear from you, so make sure you send in your questions. nooffseason@theathletic.com. And if you haven't already, we've alluded to it in this pod, there is a newsletter. Sign up for the No Offseason newsletter. Get all your great women's hoops coverage and news in one place, perfectly packaged up for you in your inbox every Tuesday. And follow our show on YouTube and wherever you're listening. Share it with your friends. Let them know if they're blowing you up about basketball stuff that you don't know the answer to. We got you. That's what we're here for. Send them here. Just tell them, stop texting me and go listen to No Offseason. It's a really great show. All right. On behalf of The Athletic, Annie Costable, and Sabreena Merchant, I'm Zena Cada. Thanking you for listening, and we'll see you next time. No Offseason is hosted by Zena Cada, with Chantel Jennings, Sabreena Merchant, Leja Clarendon, and Annie Costable. It's produced by Tanika Burrell. Our executive producer is Andrea B. Scott. Monica Compton is our video editor. Our theme music is by Marcus Bagala. Shannon Ryan is managing editor of women's basketball at The Athletic. Be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.